Hi, I'm comedian Lunga Tshuka, the Energizer Funny, streaming live with my special guest on the Price of Fame podcast. We feature entertainment professionals on the show and find out what sacrifices were made to reach their level of success. Look forward to learning about how our guests have overcome mental health challenges, achieved success breakthroughs, what you need to know about the industry, and how you know when you actually have a talent that needs to be shared with the world. Take these episodes as your personal mentorship guidance on how to be a successful entertainer. We chat to those who have made it in South Africa and abroad. Let's make the SA entertainment industry the most supported by locals, because local talent is liquor talent. Subscribe now to keep up to date. You can also find us on all social platforms.
Wow. 2016, wow. 2016, biggest news of all. Of course, 2016 gave America their first colored president, Donald Trump. And look, just because Donald Trump is orange, and a lot of his supporters have been seen doing the Hail Trump salute, okay, that doesn't mean he is a Nazi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Price of Fame. My name is Lunga Tshuka, and I'll be your host. This is season 2, episode 22. I was like, wait, what? This is season 2, episode 22, ladies and gents. Tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen, is a multilingual South African comedian, actor, author, and presenter. Born into a Jewish family, but grew up on a farm, ladies and gents, in Constantia, Cape Town. He's done comedy specials, he's done festivals, he's done movies, commercials, popular TV shows, and it's made a huge impact on a global scale. But tonight, we get to meet the man behind the success. So ladies and gents, please welcome to the speed. He goes by the name of Nik Rabinowitz.
Wow. Thank you for that amazing welcome. Hi, Lunga.
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
I'm actually doing very well today.
Cool. You had to think about that.
I like to think about it because mostly the answer to that question is a lie for most people.
Absolutely. So I'm glad that you being authentic. And that you're
I got into the ocean earlier. I had a quick surf at lunchtime, and that always washes off anything that shouldn't be there.
Absolutely. You know what? Actually, just educate us, because I know you do surfing a lot, right? What does the ocean? What does the effect of the ocean do to a person? You know, why do you think it's healthy to visit the ocean every now and then?
I think that there's probably a scientific answer to that involving some impressive terminology to do with negative ions or something like that. It just makes me feel good. I'm kind of out there. I leave my phone in the car. I have to do a vigorous aerobic workout. Sometimes, like today was probably like a 15-minute paddle through a lot of white water. So you get out there, you've really got your heart pumping, which is also physiologically very good for you. And then you're just out there in the ocean, and it's beautiful, peaceful. On a day like today, you get some bigger waves going, a little bit of adrenaline pumping through your veins. Catch a few waves, come in, and then take pictures of the car guard, because on her SnapScan thing, it's just a picture of her with a mask during COVID. And then I'll say, I'll take a picture, and then I'll send it to her via WhatsApp, and now she has my number. And I don't know if that's a good idea, but she's very sweet. Melisha is her name. Shout out to you, Melisha, in case you're one of the 3 people watching this.
I'm sure.
How many people are on? We've got a shout out from someone. Who's that from? I can't see the comments.
So with season 2, we've got we've opened the streaming opportunities to audio as well. So Anchor FM is one of the platforms that we use for audio streaming. And with Anchor FM, we have this feature where people could send us messages or shout outs through voice notes. So sometimes, a lot with our guests, sometimes we get a question coming through one of the people or the guests or fans. So tonight, I think we have a shout out for you. And don't worry, we scan through it first before we let you hear it, so that to make sure that it's nothing weird that they ask you or anything.
I want the weird ones. Don't scan them.
Yeah, all right. Let's hear who's the shout out from. Saskia, it for us, baby girl.
Hi, Lunga Tshuka. This is Sandy. Lovely show.
Hi,
Love what
Sandy.
you're doing. It's absolutely hilarious at times and very real at the same time.
At times. At other times,
then
not.
to Mr. Nik, I just love what you're doing, and I just love it when you speak Afrikaans. I think that is funny.
Afrikaans.
Thank you so much for a nice
Wow.
show, guys. Thank you.
Dis wonderlijk. Mijn Afrikaans is heel goed. Ik is van de Nederlands. Ik praat Nederlands, maar ik kan ook Afrikaans heel goed Afrikaans praten. Dank je.
Nee. Ik denk ons moet die hele show sommer in Afrikaans doen. Ik dank jou, ouwe.
Nee.
I'm glad you said no, because I would have failed immediately. So, Nik, you just recently wrapped up your tour, unmuted, and it's we've just come from 2.5 years of radio silence, not being able to move, not being able to do what we want to do. And for a lot of us coming back to comedy, and the scene was kind of rusty, there's always is everything okay, or people's, I felt like we needed to learn how to do this going out thing again. For you, you put up an old tour, and you moved around with it. You saw so many different crowds. How has that been for you?
Well, it was actually a tour of mainly just Rondebosch. Actually, just one building in Rondebosch. That was the extent of the tour. I just did a tour of the Baxter Theatre, really. Have you been on a tour of the Baxter Theatre?
No, I haven't been there.
I'll take you on a tour. There's a number of nice venues. I was in the flip side, which is actually the backstage of the main theatre. So I did a show backstage, basically, which is really cool. And yeah, a lot of people came out for the first time to a show since COVID. And it did feel all those things you're describing, like, what is this again? How do we do this? But quite exhilarating as well. And people are kind of, even if they don't know it, they are desperate to kind of get together and be part of an audience and laugh. And so it was, one could say it was a healing. It was a healing. One could say it was just really shamanic healing. It was like laughter yoga, really, is what we were doing.
And how was the experience for you?
It was a lot of stress. It was a very stressful period of time, because I put the show together in 3 months, which is not something I normally do or haven't done for many years. I've just been working on 6 to 9 months to put a show together. So I was super stressed, anxious, depressed. I went through a lot of those spaces in putting it together.
Do you ever feel like sometimes those emotions either put you on a setback, or do you find sometimes inspiration in those dark emotions as well, or those?
I don't really find any inspiration in them. I mean, I think looking back at it, so I could have put more support around myself to actually make sure that I kind of didn't spend as much time there as I did, like in the form of exercise or therapy, or even just taking anti-anxiety medication helps as well. So yeah, there's a perception that artists need to go through. I don't really get much from being in those spaces, personally.
No, I think like for me also, it also drains me a lot. And I think the only thing, if I were to say the only inspiration I get is like you get to a point where you feel like you need to shake this off now, you need to do something. So, and then when I do something, I always start off with this big hunger or this big shoot. I feel like that's probably the thing that I'll draw out of those moments. But I do believe that, embracing both moments of greatness and also moments of like feeling down. I feel like facing both of it is kind of like healthy, But yeah, and you find some artists like Adele who like I think she produces the greatest work from those kind of moments,
that can happen. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess different folks are different strokes.
There's also a really nice. I actually have it on my. I'm looking at it now on my whiteboard over there, which is the creative process summarized into 6 points. Do you know the 6 stages of the creative process, Lunga? It goes. No. I don't know if you can read that.
No, I can't. It's kind of. But you can read it to me, please.
Okay, so it says. I'm trying to see if my camera can read it, but it can't. It says, "This is awesome." So you book the theater or you book the show and you decide to write the show and you say, "This is," to yourself, you say, "This is awesome." Then stage 2, "This is tricky." And then stage 3, "This is shit." And then stage 4, "I am shit."
Yeah.
And then 5, "This might be okay." And then 6, "This is awesome." And I always forget that that's pretty much how it goes. And it normally goes that way.
That is so true. That is so true. And even the part where like I am shit, that's somewhere where I get stuck a lot, and I always have to wrestle myself. And then, like you say again, you go out there and you try again, and you get some kind of response, and you're like, well, this is not that bad, And then you take it from that response, and then you keep running. And then when you keep running, you see a completely transformed version of yourself, and that's when you realize, wow, this is awesome. So yeah, I love that. Please do share that book. What is it called actually? The 6 levels or 6 steps of.
Is this called Creative Process? Somebody sent it to me, or I saw it on somebody's. I think I actually rehearsed a show in New York a few years ago, and it was on a drawing board. It was pinned to a board in a world famous musical director's office, and I took a snapshot of it.
What's it like to do a show overseas? Like, that's something.
Well, I didn't do that show overseas. I rehearsed it in that guy's office.
Oh, okay.
Which was kind of weird. And that was in stage 3 of the creative process as well. At that time, It was definitely, this is shit. Why am I wasting money coming to New York to rehearse something that is shit?
Yeah.
Sorry, continue. No, but so I didn't do that show. But I have done a couple of shows overseas, and it is it's really exciting to just perform for people, a whole different audience, and people from a different background, and when your stuff works, it's very exciting. It almost feels like you're speaking in a foreign language.
Yeah.
Like they understood you.
Yeah, that's crazy because like I've performed to foreigners in South Africa, like in Cape Town, and like especially if you find yourself performing in OBS or in town, those spots always draw some foreigners into the crowds, So, and I find that easy, it's quite. At first, it wasn't easy for me because my first material was based on me being a black guy who grew up in Mitchell's Plain. So all of the things that I made references to, they could not relate. So I found myself like coming up really short. And then I started broadening my perspective in terms of interests in material, Then I started writing about traveling, relationships, things that people experience or are more likely to experience. So, but I found that a lot easier performing with foreign crowds, But I don't know what I would feel like being in a foreign country, from a South African performing to like a foreign crowd. I feel like I don't know. I think the anxiety levels will just like really get to me. Like, are they gonna get me? What about my accent and anything like that? How was your experience? Like, what did you kind of like do to just make you power through your performances overseas?
Sure. There's been quite a variety of them. Some of which went well, some didn't go so well. I can remember once being at this theater in Amsterdam, where I was emceeing. I think it was a kind of a variety. It was mainly a music show. It was a big South African festival, and the first half really didn't go well. And I can remember phoning my coach, who might have been my wife at the time. I mean, she's still my wife, but my coach at the time, and having to like just deal with my conversation about how badly it was going to get that out of the way. Because normally it's just a conversation that's in the way of you showing up and being fully self-expressed and free to be yourself. There's some like, I'm not good enough, or they don't like me, or they don't get me, or whatever. So how can you get that out of the way so you can step up?
Nik, this is something I realized that first time I met you, that you the first time I saw anything about you was I saw that you're a comedian and you're multilingual and all of that. And now digging into a little bit about your background, hearing that sorry that you grew up on a farm, in a Jewish family with a whole Jewish. Could you please paint a picture of your upbringing? What was that like?
My upbringing, yeah. So my dad, when he was about 40, gave up. He worked for an accounting. He was an accountant, and he was, I think, quite depressed with his job, and discovered an interest in making pottery. And he took pottery classes at night. And then after a few years, decided to quit his job and start making pots full time. And he found, he visited some people on a farm, and they said, yeah, you can come and build yourself a workshop and live here. So that's what he did. And then there's a whole story about he ended up meeting my mom because he went to fight in World War II with her dad. And so her dad accidentally introduced them to each other. They were 32 years apart. And I accidentally came along as well. And that's how I ended up growing up on this farm, which was a multilingual, multicultural environment, and which was unusual in South Africa at that time because it was it was like a farm but in a city. So there were pass laws, and we were raided regularly by the security police, and people would fly in different directions to hide. But I was very fortunate to grow up not just in a beautiful place, but I had a whole bunch of friends my age. So I grew up with I grew up with Gabriela Rivera and Basil Arendse and Uzolani Makasi. And we were like tight. We were like a little gang. And so I had for a white South African quite a unique experience. I mean, obviously farm kids have that kind of thing. But it was quite an amazing childhood that I had.
Yeah. And at what point did comedy become like a passion for you?
That was my early 20s. So yeah, I studied, and then I got a job working for a theater company in 7 countries, traveling around as a sort of production manager. But I was really just the driver and the tent guy, set up the tents. Once I dug a long drop for my boss. I would I was like a general dog's body doing all the stuff. And at the end of that year, there was like a comedy lab where you could go and sort of audition. And somebody said, "Oh, why don't you go to this thing?" And I went, and they said, "Oh, come down on Sunday to the Armchair." This was the Armchair Theatre at the time. There was something called the Cape Comedy Collective. And I went that Sunday. It was, I think, October 2001. So almost 21 years ago. And I did my 5 minutes, and I haven't stopped doing it since.
It's so crazy that the armchair is still there, and I mean, a lot of people can say that that's where they started their comedy career. And you're speaking about like 20 years back, and I think was the Comedy Collective Stuart Taylor, because I think I interviewed him and I think he mentioned something about the Comedy Collective. Was that
yeah,
Stuart Taylor?
Stuart was part of it, but it was run by a couple called Mark and Sam, who had come out and settled from England, and that's where pretty much everybody started out here.
What was the scene like then versus now? Do you think that it's a lot better now, or do you think times were a lot better back then?
It was very different. I mean, it had a sort of pioneering kind of spirit to it. Like everybody was just discovering that show that I performed at did my first open mic was the first time I'd been to a comedy show.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think maybe it started like 99. I don't know when the first actual gigs were, but so it was a very new kind of medium, and it had this like excitement about it. But there wasn't much. There was the armchair, and then gradually there were like one or two other little gigs, and there was a very core group of comedians. So now you have, well, COVID is kind of like wiped out some things, but that's the nice thing about comedy is it's like mushrooms, they can just pop up again. But there's so much more variety now, and different people coming up, and women, and all sorts of interesting personalities coming through. I think it's, I mean, how do you compare? I'm sort of not really that involved in the circuit right now, so like I'm not sure what it's like to be a new person coming in, right? You could probably say what that's like for you now, having been on the scene for a few years.
Yeah, I think, well, I've been in the scene for like maybe 10 years now, started 2012. So like the difference that I've seen is a lot more access to information. There's a lot more gigs also happening, and different levels of for gigs, because I know when I started out, there wasn't too many open mic spots. So it was kind of hard to get onto a show, we would see people like you on the lineup and all of that. And with those gigs, there was only one spot for an open mic, and we were like a lot of people. So for me, what I noticed that a lot more open mic spots grew, so we could try and test, and also where seasoned comedians could come in, also try and test new material. And I think the digital space is also what also developed, with comedy, where you get like content creators now, and comedians also doing some content creating and using comedy, using comedy principles or comedy, a lot of things from comedy to do their. And I'm also seeing that a lot of comedians now are being in the limelight, like the front line. It's not just the back then it was you get your main, for example, an ad, you get your main guy, and then comedians are the friends or who just throw a line in here. But now the comedian is the main guy, he's the ambassador, or he's the face, or he's carrying the campaign. So yeah, I think that's pretty awesome, in terms of like the growth of the industry. But there is also to it where people are just, there's a bunch of entitled people and have so much opinions and not open to learning and don't understand of the process of things. So you get a lot of that as well. So it's kind of like a bit of both, a bit of craziness. But I guess when you started out, you guys are more of like a unit, right? Because it wasn't that widespread. Everything was like more focused to one space, or these kind of people that does booking. So I think the support and maybe the camaraderie was a lot better your time, would you say?
I wonder. I mean, I think you're always going to gravitate to certain people. You're not going to get on with everybody.
True.
But yeah, there is a certain like feeling of, especially amongst that crew that like came up around that time, like the sort of. I mean, I didn't think of myself as a pioneer because there was already guys that were established, and like I wanted to be. I think there was a thing called the Comedy All Stars at one point. And it's like I was still doing open mic at that time. I was like, I want to be an all star. I want to be like, I think it was like Kurt Stewart. There was a guy called Colin Moss. Koki Falco was one of those guys. I can't remember who the others were. So it's interesting, like who's stuck around.
Yeah. And like in your like you mentioned, with your upbringing and all of that, also growing up with a farm influence, what would you say, or who would you say has kind of like had an influence on kind of like the person who you are today, personally and comedically?
Yeah, I mean, I think your parents obviously kind of shape you in many ways. My dad was a big influence in terms of living a life that's true to yourself, following your dream/passion, like that, and not just that, but also just the kind of man that he was. Very present and kind, and somebody that inspired, like thousands of people would come, not just to buy his pottery, but just to be with him. So it was a real privilege experiencing that as a kid. And then his best friend was an actor and comedian who happened to be my godfather, and so I grew up watching him and listening to him and collecting his stories, which I would regurgitate to my friends. I had a little black book where I'd write down all of his jokes and stories. And so that was my first comedic influence, and a big one. And then the sort of characters that came through our house and the pottery and the farm was like just a series of very interesting people, many of whom my dad was kind of like borderline in the struggle. Like, I have a joke about it where he was at a party once. The underground were like, "Hey, can you maybe deliver a parcel to a safe house for us in Woodstock on Monday?" And he was like, "And can I think about it?" And they said, "Yeah." And then he phoned them back and said, "No." And that was the closest he got to being like in the struggle. He was like, when you see people at gym, those guys who are watching other people do things, but they're just like sipping on a thing. Yeah, this was my dad. But a lot of his friends were sent to jail and were exiled, and then came back in the 90s, and so I was exposed to all of those people as well. So it was a very rich, interesting. I mean, as a kid, it's not interesting. No one goes, "Oh, I've had a very interesting childhood so far." But I mean, I used to climb trees. I would climb trees and do my own monologues at the top of a pine tree at the bottom of my garden. Well, it wasn't my garden. We didn't own the farm, by the way. I like to make people think that we owned a wine farm in Constantia, but unfortunately, we didn't.
That is so awesome. Well, it's actually really interesting to hear that your influences really started at a very young age. And
yeah, I mean, I'd sit at the Friday night table, and I'd wait for my godfather to like start. When's he going to start? Is he in the mood? Is he going to start? When's he going to start? And then so you get that direct experience of timing and storytelling. And I started doing it when I was in my teens. I would take my friends up the mountain, I'd make a fire up the mountain that we would camp up there, and I'd start like with these stories. A lot of them were in Afrikaans as well. So it'd be stories like, ja, onze dag gaan jag in die bosse. Dit was daar in die koue bokkenveld en onze leeuws gaan jag en dit was skemerse tyd daar wie Sondag deur die berge wegkruip. Toe kyk ek aan, ek gaan seker blare wat so en ek vat met 2 lopende haalgeweer vir my oupa grootjie, en as hy ding spring, dan skiet ek hom, dat is nie hoe hy maak so, wow, val gefrik op my voete en toe kak ek my broek vol. Net dan nie, nou, toe ek, wow, myself verskrik, my broek vol gekak.
And that is so hilarious. Actually, you just reminded me of the first few jokes I've ever heard growing up was Gamachi and Abdolchi jokes. Did you ever tell a Gamachi and Abdolchi joke?
No, never. I've been told them, but I think luckily I can say I've never told one.
Or one of those jokes where there was a Batman, was a SWAT man, a Bushman, and what's the name?
Oh, jeez. I actually do remember there were jokes about there was a character called Marai and somebody, and maybe I might have told that to a friend of mine, and it had something to do with varicose veins, which she didn't call varicose veins. She called something else like wires up to my hot plate.
What?
Wires up to my hot plate.
And it's like completely something else. So, like, I mean, with having like you said, you had the influence at a very young age, and I'm sure your parents could see that you were gravitating towards the comedy or the arts. So was it like, was it always easy for you to be a comedian, or like tell your parents like this is your passion and this is what you want to do, or did they kind of like have a different dream for you to go in a different direction, or did you have like any challenges growing up, wanting to be a comedian?
Well, I don't think anyone really saw me going in that direction. I mean, your kid tells a few jokes and they like reading some joke books, But yeah, after I finished studying and working and then discovered stand-up, actually I went into theater first. I thought that was going to be the thing. But it turned out I wasn't great at that. And then actually I started getting work doing corporate theater, which was it doesn't really exist so much now, but it was kind of my bread and butter for a while. While I was doing open mic stand-up, I was doing these corporate shows and traveling and doing this stuff. And I think my parents were, probably quite shocked that that's what I was choosing to do, because my dad, having been an artist and had a sort of financially tricky, unpredictable existence. So maybe at first they were like, is this really the thing? And then also I was quite bad in the beginning. I don't think I wasn't particularly great. And so then it's like, I remember my mother-in-law, before I married my wife, going, is this Nick's? Is this what Debbie, is this, I mean, how, is there a future? How's he going to support? I mean, have you had this discussion?
Yeah. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. And like, what would you say to defend yourself, to be like, what, just believe in me. This is what I'm going to do. Or at what point did those people who kind of thought that this is not going to be something sustainable, at what point were they actually flipped, and on your side and being like, you know what, you actually proved us wrong, and you're actually doing pretty well. At what point in your career did you do that?
Well, I don't think I ever tried to really defend it in any way. Yeah, I wasn't like, you need to believe in me or whatever. Luckily, at that time, I was doing quite a lot of personal development work, and I had coaches, and I was part of a community that was very supportive in terms of anything's possible. What do you want to create? How can we support you with that? So I didn't really need that from my skeptical friends or family. So I think that was actually probably quite a big deal at the time. But I sort of just had a conviction that this is something I can do, and I feel like I'll be. I can remember once hosting a show for the Luries, which is the advertising awards, and emceed this thing for, I don't know, 2,500 people, and I bombed like really badly, so much so that I had an inner ear. At one point, the director said, Nick, can you just stop doing any jokes? Please don't do any more. Just follow the script. Just do the script. Yeah, just finish. Just let's get through this.
Oh, painful.
And I can remember that night thinking, I think I should chuck this in. This isn't working. And there were a few moments. There have been, we've all had those things. You bomb badly, and it's like, I've had that conversation a few times in the last couple of years. Like, maybe I should pivot. Maybe I too should become a Gino the Craftsman.
Or an influencer. You could
An
be-
influencer. I'll be a terrible influencer. I'll be a compost influencer.
Okay. Well, I mean, you could create some content around surfing and obviously comedy and all of that. Everyday comedy
I'm
life.
a terrible surfer. I'm a very average surfer. I mean, no one's gonna. I mean,
I think that's what will make it funny and interesting.
You think?
Yeah.
Today I'll be surfing a very small wave, in a very mediocre fashion, but I'll be wearing these very sexy boots that were given to me by I've forgotten the name of the brand. Johnny, what's the name of the brand? Okay, cut. Let's go roll from the top again.
You see, I mean, that just right there. You just messing around, but I think I would have been a funny skit, and then actually seeing yourself like a small wave where the kids
I actually quite enjoy being an influencer for things, for causes. So right now, I'm supporting a project in Noordhoek that's cleaning out alien vegetation that's decimating the indigenous fauna and flora of that area. There's Waves for Change, which is putting 2,000 kids at risk through a surf therapy program every week. We're doing a fundraiser for them. And there's various other. I enjoy being an influencer for things like that. Material stuff, I'm always a bit like.
Yeah. No, to be honest with you, I'm with you there. I've been thinking about writing some things, some content and all of that, but I don't know, it doesn't feel authentic for me to do all that, so I don't know. But I do understand the growth and the power of it. So yeah, so kind of, we have to have a 50-50 of
nothing like a good unboxing and a good unboxing video you can feel good when they send you that free stuff, that free pair of shoes, hey? That free bottle of brandy, that free bottle of wine.
Yeah. And like you've been like very focused on your career, and you've produced like 13 or 14 one-man shows. Did you ever have like an experience of where you had like experiencing some social challenges, something like peer pressure?
Peer pressure. I mean, I guess I sort of, as a teenager, I'm trying to think. Not really. I mean, I think maybe I was pressurizing other people to take drugs. Maybe.
I didn't expect.
I don't think so.
Right
But
now,
I was
your
I was
right
trying to
now
be a rebel.
Yeah.
What's that?
Sorry, I was just saying that you probably someone's trauma story right now.
Maybe.
That's hilarious.
But I mean, I guess peer pressure looks like, it could be different things. Like, there I am studying business science, first year, it's 1995, and there is pressure to be a certain way or study a certain thing. Like, all my friends were studying business science, so I thought, well, I guess you need to do that to make a living. So I went and did business science, probably because of peer pressure in a way. I went and did something that was just not for me at all, because I wasn't really in touch with myself, because I didn't have the freedom to. This is what it is, actually, is the concern for looking good. A lot of people have that. We're deeply concerned with, do I look good to my peers? And I want to do that at all costs and avoid looking bad. So I won't say certain things, or I won't be truthful, or I won't be self-expressed, or I won't follow my thing. And so when I had a breakthrough in that, at the age of 23, 24, that then allowed me to follow stand-up. I don't know if I could have done that without it.
I've mentioned that you done like 13, about 14, comedy one-man specials, and of course you've done so much more comedy time. And I'm sure a lot of comedians have reached out to you for advice or some mentorship or even like helping them prepare for one-man shows. In your experience, what would you, because as comedians, I believe that we're constantly learning. You don't reach a point where you're like, I know it all, I'm fine, I'm just going to maintain this. I feel like you're always learning, you're always evolving. What would you say makes a good comedic scholar? Because I'm sure you've seen people that are unteachable, and I'm sure you've seen people that can like really do so. So in your own experience, obviously, what has kind of made you the person that you are and perform at the level that you are? What would you say makes a good comedic scholar?
I mean, do you mean scholar or performer?
Well,
Because they are
overall performer, I mean, in terms of like doing your writing, performing more, asking for advice,
yeah.
what do you think are some of those tips that comedians should really take into consideration to be a really good comedian and also reach maybe a level of success that you have?
One of the things I found, well, there's a few things I found helpful. If you split this up into two things, one is the content, of what you're doing, what you're saying as a comic, and the other is in the realm of, it's a little bit less tangible. It's in the realm of being. So who are you being, or what way of being are you bringing to the stage? Said another way, your stage presence. People talk about somebody's is that a thing? Stage presence. People
Yes,
talk about that, right? Yeah. So like what are you bringing in that area? If you are deeply insecure, some people manage to make that funny, but generally, if you're having to kind of suppress that or whatever, it's so how do you kind of develop a way of being that's where you can be authentically yourself and free to just be? Because that's generally the funniest people have that thing where an audience is no longer, that thing of somebody walks on and you're immediately anxious for the person because they're anxious, and then so there's that world of how do you ongoingly develop yourself and take, I mentioned this earlier, but take what's in the way between you and an audience out of the way, so that there's a real connection. And because that connection is really what we need as a sort of baseline before we can get to the content. You can see there's certain people who will write great content, but they'll deliver it in a way that it just doesn't land, because there's an expression I really like, that's who you're being is so loud I can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that's the one area to work on, and then concurrently there's material. How do you develop really great material? And I think one of the things I've been fortunate to have is really great collaborators. I feel like my best work has come out of collaboration. I don't love sitting on my own in isolation, and never have really. For a long time, I thought that's what you had to do, because it looks that way from stand-up, watching stand-ups, like, oh, they obviously wrote all of that themselves. And for some people, that's certainly not my best work. Doesn't come from that. So I look up at posters, and a lot of them are directed by Brent Palmer. So probably for about 15 years, he and I have collaborated on many of my shows, from the writing process to directing me to, and right up to this one, I haven't worked with him for a few years. And we got back together again, and it's great to have that partnership. And I've had other people write for me, and that's obviously a place of privilege where you can, afford to pay comedy writers. And so what if you don't have that, then you kind of have to collaborate and assist people, and they'll assist you, or however you work that out. But I think particularly for young comics, it's often the best thing to do, because you can't see yourself. It's a bit like trying to see your own eyeballs. You don't necessarily see what's not working about your act. So if you can have additional sets of eyes and funny people who can go, hey, what about this and that, and what about this, and maybe that tag, and what if you? And so it was just on this last show, I had like a few different comics come. I worked a lot with Kate Pinchuk in developing the show. Another couple of writers, Tom Eaton, helped me a lot. Angel came to watch it, and then I'll probably do some more work with a few of them developing the show further, because it's always a work in progress, so to speak. So yeah, I think to summarize, it looks like a one-man band, but I think some of the finest you don't see, but behind the scenes there's a whole team there's potentially a team of people involved in
I know I can completely understand that, because if I look at Kevin Hart, he's got an entourage of his fellow comedic friends as well, and they move with him and they go with him to his shows, and he has writing sessions with him as well, where he will try his job with them, and they'll obviously help him here and then. No, don't do that way, because it's always good to have different perspectives, because like you said, it's looking at yourself, so you don't really see next person might see, I could be like, if you actually did this, or you said this, or added that, there would be so much flavor to your. And I find that very rare among the guys right now, but they will come to you if they feel like they want to add something to your joke. But I find that very rare in terms of people reaching out to be like, look, I'm busy working on this. I just want to bounce some more ideas of you. I do know there used to be a session where the guys would meet up maybe on a Monday, on a Tuesday, somewhere in Obs, and just randomly talk comedy and bounce ideas. But I've never really heard of anything like that when someone's actually preparing for a show, and getting a couple of people in to bounce some ideas. So yeah,
no, I don't do it randomly at all. It's like we'll meet for 3 hours a day for like 4 days a week for 3 months, or whatever the case is. But then it's like you have a structure in which to do it.
Have you ever reached a breaking point in your career before things got really, really nice for you, or before you experienced success? And what did you do to kind of keep yourself focused to propel through?
Yeah, I've had a few moments. I once remember early on doing a gig it's like a club gig somewhere, and I got heckled, and the guy was like, "You're not funny. Get off. Just get off the stage." And I was like, okay. And I just put the mic back in the stand, and I just walked straight out the door. It was in Rondebosch Main Road, and I just walked on the main. I just kept going. And I remember that clearly as like a moment of like, no, I think I should keep doing this. But as I mentioned earlier, I sort of have been surrounded with people who don't really tolerate it. You're like, what are you talking about? Like, don't be ridiculous. That's that's a story you've made up. And for the last few years, I'll keep going back to, I'm no longer relevant. Like, I'll repeat this to my wife. Like, I think I should give up now. Like, just quit while I'm ahead, because I'm no longer relevant. There's all these young guys coming through. And she'd be like, well, what are you talking about? When did you make up that story? So I think I think mental health for comics is a big thing, because it's such a solitary occupation, and so I think that we do need to find ways to really manage our mental health, because it's like the agony of trying to pretend to be the entertainer when the reality is you're not experiencing that. I think that really has a corrosive effect over time.
Are there any rituals or things that you kind of do that helps you stay grounded or focused? I mean, earlier you mentioned going out to the ocean.
I like to slaughter a cat at the dead of night once a month at full moon.
On a full moon. Are there any practices or that you kind of feel that you put into practice that kind of like keeps you either like focused or inspired, or just keeps you grounded, that keeps you focused on your dream? Are there any things like that you kind of keep dear to your heart?
You know what? I think it's sort of basics. It's like eat, sleep, and move. Like I can get into bad sleep. People have different sleeping patterns. You can work out if you're a morning lark or a night owl. I think I'm a morning lark. Like I work best if I go to bed early, which is tricky if you're working nights and whatever. But generally, if I'm getting enough sleep and I'm eating healthily and I'm moving and I'm exercising, I'm going to be good. And then I meditate. I actually do breath work. I used to meditate, but I found it boring. So before the pandemic, I discovered this breathing guided breath work stuff. And I do it sometimes twice a day, but always pretty much once a day, like around midday. I'll meditate. So especially if I have a show, I might meditate more than that. Just so that I feel like my synapses are firing and I'm alert. And then, yeah, things like surfing and being on the mountain and being in nature, I find very helpful. I don't really have any other sort of rituals. I mean, I'm thinking about like when I'm doing a run at the theater, I'll get there like an hour and a half, 2 hours early. I'll do my sound check. I'll meditate. Early on in a run, I'll go through my notes a lot until I'm like got that down. And then, yeah, there's nothing really like other than that.
Pretty awesome. Well, I like, I'm loving the breath work that you spoke of, and that's something that I like. Just maybe
I've listened to the same guy doing the same meditation for like 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Elisha Goldstein. Make sure you're lying comfortably.
Yeah.
And I haven't gotten tired of him yet. It's weird.
Yeah. No, I mean, if it works for you, then why drop it,
Yeah. I really just do it as an excuse to fall asleep. And a lot of times I do fall asleep. And then that's the best.
I learned some kind of breath work exercise because I used to do Kyokushin karate. And I went to one camp that they hosted, and they had this guy from Japan who came down, and he taught us this breathwork exercises that looks pretty much like, when they do that Tai Chi, slow movements kind of thing, It's just that with this, also, there is slow movements, and then there's explosive movements, and then there's movements where you're just stagnant for like a period of time in different positions. So, and that was to do with breath work, controlling your breathing, breathing a certain way, breathing all the way to your core and not the lungs, and also at a certain speed, at a very slow pace.
Yeah.
Oh, and just taught us about the qualities of that, the health qualities that it does, and also it's a good technique to keep yourself warm if you're like getting cold or whatever, So, and just also to calm yourself and just clear out the noise. So now I've found that to be very.
There's also something called holotropic breathwork, which I don't do that often, but because it's quite intense, and it's kind of like it's like 20 minutes of where you're breathing into your diaphragm and then up into your chest and then out. And if you do it like that for 20 minutes, it actually they actually discovered this when psychedelics were banned in the US in the 60s, and people started getting more into breath work as a means of creating an altered state of consciousness. So I'll do that from time to time when I want a hard reset, like a proper Control Alt Delete, and get in touch with gratitude and feel emotion. And so I do that occasionally as well. And then also in the last couple of years, I've gone on a number of psychedelic journeys. I've done a couple of mushroom psilocybin journeys, which I found probably the most sort of profound spiritual experiences of my life in the last 2 years.
No, that is absolutely true. I mean, I've also experimented with magic mushrooms, and I feel like I found I had a real prophetic, experience, and it was just opened me to like my personal journey and life journey and things that I need to work on, and traumas revealing. I was like, oh snap, So yeah, I can truly relate to you in terms of that, and also with the work, like it's crazy that you could just do a certain type of rhythm of breathing that can actually put you in that state up.
Yeah.
Like even in yoga, they have the fire breathing and all of that, and it's just crazy how you can just find some kind of meditation. Like I said, just a different rhythm of breathing can do so much benefits to your body. So yeah, I'm keen to explore more of that. And for my final question, Sir, Mr. Rabinowitz, thank you so much, first of all, for being a guest. You've been such a great sport. Really loved getting to know you. But for my final question, is the question that I ask all my guests, and this is the one where I put you in a time machine. And in this time machine, I want to dial it back to a time of a very, very young version of yourself. So it's today who has learned everything, who has done all the, we've done, walked the journey, learned the lessons and everything like that. And going back to a time where you perhaps were a young version of yourself, where you probably needed some guidance or some advice. And it's the you of today to the younger version of yourself. What would that advice be if I gave you like 5 minutes? What would that message be to the younger version of you?
Well, I mean, I don't know exactly what age. I would probably tell my 16-year-old self that blowjobs can't make girls pregnant. So just relax. Because I didn't know that. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have Google. And I would probably tell, I'm trying to think about like a very insecure patch I went through, like when I was maybe like 18, 19, of like, what am I going to do with my life? I think that's where you need, yes. I mean, people go through traumatic experiences at different ages and need guidance at different times. But if I think back to that time, my mom was going through a very depressed patch. She was kind of expressed some suicidal ideas, and I felt kind of alone and unsure of what to do with my life. And looking back, I would probably say to that dude, like it's okay. You can actually explore, find what it is you want to do. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing, and it'll work out. Everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. How's that for a piece of advice that doesn't involve blowjobs? What I would say to people who want to embark on a career in entertainment is that like how what's that bird that goes after shiny things? Is it a I don't know what it is. A crow. Well, yeah, it's like because Hollywood and America is like such a force in this industry. We have this idea that that's your name up in lights and wherever, Netflix and whatever. That's the thing that's going to make you happy. Fame and success doesn't. Just a little bit of it, the tiny little bit of it I've experienced is like you see people that they get all that, and it's like, is that it? Is this it? And so I guess at this point in my life, I'm looking at balance and family and the question of what's really going to be fulfilling. How do I contribute to my community and people and grow other people and support other people? Because ultimately, some of those things are more rewarding than being fucking famous.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a lot of people, and you're not the first to say that. It's like you reach that, you get that award or you get recognized, and you still feel like, wow, is this it?
Is that
and yeah, and I think the things that are more valuable and the things that mean more and the things that like you would rather be happy with that actually make you happy is when you have a huge impact on someone's life or you've inspired someone. I think so. Once you reach those milestones or once you've impacted someone's life in that kind of way, I think that's more fulfilling than being recognized or having fame or whatever. So it's not all the glitter is not gold. Yeah. So I mean, Kanye West puts it in that song so perfectly. But Nick, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for being a guest on The Price of Fame. I enjoyed my time with you tonight. Before I let you
Thanks,
go,
yeah.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry?
thank you.
Oh, awesome. Sorry. Before I let you go, is there anything that you feel that I maybe didn't give you the opportunity to share, or is there anything that you would love to share just before I let you go, or any shout outs, to my fans, or anything like that?
Shout out to Sandy. That was lekker dat jy ingetoon het na die show, want dit was fucking great. Dankie, Sandy. No, I feel like we covered absolutely everything. I think you know everything about me now, apart from that time in 1999 when I had to give my girlfriend I don't want to talk about that. Why did you have to bring that up? I don't want to get into that. I've already spoken about that on stage. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nick. Really, truly enjoyed having you on the show tonight. Please, for those guys and folks and females, ladies and girls and guys and boys and girls.
Ladies and gentle them.
Yes, you must be very specific now with these days, because I might not. I don't know if I identify as a comedian no more. I'm kidding. But yeah, ladies and gents, please, Nick, for those who are not following you just yet or are not aware of your social handles, please give them opportunity to follow you by letting us know what are your social handles.
Yeah, you can follow me. Go to Muizenberg. I'll be at Muizenberg on Friday. If you want to meet me at Hang 10, you can follow me into the water, like Jesus.
Only with the surfing.
Or at my name, at Nik Rabinowitz. Nick, if you can say my name, if you can remember how to spell my name. So it was a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people probably spell Nick with a CK,
Yeah.
And they probably get out by Rabinowitz, be like, how do you spell that?
Rabinowitz. Rabino. In Zimbabwean, good. Rabino. What?
What are some of the weird pronunciations that you've gotten for your surname?
Rainbowitz. Rabinowitz. Robins.
Yeah, no, it is. Like, to be honest with you, I would have also never figured it out if I didn't hear it for the first time. I heard it first before I saw what it spelled like.
Do you know, actually, that's the correct pronunciation, because my surname is actually Russian. It's actually a Russian surname. It means son of the rabbi.
Ah.
The Russians forced us to get surnames at some point. And a Russian woman, this is actually at my friend Brent Palmer's stag night in 2012. I think we went to Mavericks, and a Russian woman convinced me to get a lap dance from her, and then proceeded to ask me to make small talk during the lap dance. She was like, "What is your name?" Actually, she was more like this. She was more like, "And what is your name?" And I told her my name and surname. I said, it's Nik Rabinowitz. And she said, no, that is a Russian surname. That is not how you pronounce. It's Rabinowitz. This is how. And I was like, how do you know that? And she said this thing to me. She said that Rabinowitz is a character in like a whole series of Russian jokes. Rabinowitz is like the main guy. It's like Van der Merwe. I'm like Van der Merwe of Russia, right? It's Rabinowitz, and it's Englishmen and Irishmen, and they always walk into a bar, and then Rabinowitz says something, and everybody laugh at Rabinowitz. And I was like, oh, because he's the funny guy. And she said, no, he's a stupid Jew.
Oh, snap. I just really thought like, oh, he's the main guy, but like,
and but at that point, I came in my chinos because I've always found anti-Semitism very arousing.
That's hilarious. I mean, the significance of that, Rabinowitz being a joker and you're a comedian. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I think from today onwards, I will pronounce you as Rabinowitz. Nik
Rabinowitz. It's got the emphasis like Xhosa. Xhosa has got the emphasis on the second last syllable, so it's Rabinowitz.
All right. Nik, thank you so much. Like I said, I really had fun speaking to you and getting to know you on a more personal level. I know so much about your secrets now.
Pleasure, brother.
I've had a lovely time with you. I'm going to say good night to you, Nik. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Cheers. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's it from Mr. Nik Rabinowitz. And when you see him, make sure you pronounce his surname properly, because that's not how you pronounce. You pronounce Rabinowitz. For those of you who checked out the episode and saw the whole voice note coming through, if you want to get interacting with our guests on The Price of Fame, please do so. We encourage you to do so. So check us out on Anchor FM, where you can go there, have a specific feature where they can send voice notes. You guys can send us voice notes. Whatever guest that you see on the show that I'm interviewing, you get opportunity to ask them a question yourself. And that way we can interact and have some fun. But otherwise, if you just prefer your audio versions of this podcast, you can also check it out on Apple and Spotify. For your snippets of this podcast, you can check it out on Instagram. You can check it out. You go straight to The Price of Fame ZA. We'll give you the snippets of season 1 and season 2. And the link in the bio will take you straight to my YouTube channel, where you can find the extended episodes of season 1 and season 2 of The Price of Fame. And when you're on these platforms, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, because it does a lot with the algorithm and it helps the brand grow. If you want to follow me, if you're not following me just yet, you can catch me on Facebook at Lunga Tshuka, the Energizer Funny. That is Lunga Tshuka, the Energizer Funny. And on Instagram, you can catch me at Lunga Tshuka. That's it from me tonight, ladies and gents. This was episode 22 of season 2 with Nik Rabinowitz. My name is Lunga Tshuka. I've been your host. Good night. This is The Price of Fame.